All right, so let's go ahead and download and run the code from the series Supercharged Web Scraping with Async.io. Now, the big part about this is we absolutely need to have a couple things installed. One is Python 3.8. The other is Chrome driver so that you can actually use the main features of this. So keep that in mind. Now, if you don't have those things installed, check out the requirements video on this one and it'll show you exactly what to do. Next, let's go ahead and jump over to GitHub. So cfe.sh/GitHub, and then navigate to the repository for the Supercharged Web Scraping with Async.io. Now, if you know Git, by all means, use Git to grab this code. For the rest of us, I'm going to go ahead and download the zip file. It's a lot easier than to explain Git if you don't know how to use that. And then I'm going to go ahead and show this in the Finder. And of course, it's a zip file. I'm going to rename it to demo. And then I'm going to drag this over into a dev folder. This is where I do all my development. Just a folder I created specifically for development. And I'll go ahead and unzip this dev demo. And it's called Supercharged Async.io and all that. I'm going to change that to being demo as well. And if you went through the series already, this code is definitely a little bit different than what you saw or did in that series because I probably made some changes off video after it was done. And of course, they were minor changes. So what we see in the demo is a couple CSV files in here. Now I'm actually going to stash these things. I'm going to go ahead and say archive or something along those lines. You could delete them too, but I'm going to go ahead and move them over. Okay, so let's make note that we only have this data here. I do not have a database file whatsoever. So I do have lessons in here. So if you didn't watch it, you could just review all of these Python notebooks to get the gist of it. But the module we want to use is this one right here. So this is going to be a Jupyter notebook itself. So we're going to go ahead and run and actually use that. And finally, we will be scraping spoonflower.com. So we're going to scrape all the links first and then data about the product second. So I'm not going to go into that too much here. Let's go ahead and jump into Terminal or PowerShell, depending on what system you're on, and we'll cd into our dev folder, cd into that demo, and I'll go ahead and do pip env install. And of course, this will take a moment or so. Now, the pip file will tell us all of the requirements for this project. If for some reason those change over time, I'll definitely make sure that the pip file is updated. If you look on GitHub, we've got a number of things in here that are required, as well as Python version 3.8. So using pip env is not required. You can totally use a virtual environment. Just make sure you get the correct requirements going to run this. Because the next thing is we'll just go ahead and do a Jupyter Notebook runner as well. So we're going to run the Jupyter Notebook now. So pip env run Jupyter Notebook. And naturally, if you were using a different kind of virtual environment, just activate that virtual environment and then run the Jupyter Notebook. Now, I want you to actually use the Supercharged module notebook itself. This is going to be the most up-to-date module that will actually run the commands that we can use elsewhere. So this is kind of like our how-to guide here that we absolutely use in the series as well. Actually, we create it in the series. So first and foremost, we want to view the stored data if we have any. Remember how I mentioned there's no database showing up yet? Well, we use SQLite just to make it nice and easy on us. But what I see here is I actually have no data whatsoever. These, of course, are Pandas data frames that are coming from SQL based off of these table names that we give. Okay, so that's going to be different for any given service. But the idea here is that Spoonflower is the one we're going off of. Now, Spoonflower links are going to be associated to the links to the products themselves. Right, and then we actually parse all of the data. We use regular expressions to get the correct URL. And then what we do is actually get the individual products themselves and do that scraping. So that's what this is. So scrape fabric links, that's all of the links to the products. And it's starting on this page right here. And then we'll actually go through the pagination and do all that. And this -- save CSV will actually save this and store it into a CSV file, as well as a SQL database. Now, I'm using SQLite, so that's not that big of a deal, but this will be nice to at least see that I can easily share this CSV file anywhere. So let's go ahead and run this, and what we should see is a number of these Chrome drivers opening up. So what that's doing is it's actually taking the pagination. So there's a lot of different pages, which we can take a look at that website. If we scroll all the way to the bottom, each page has a lot of links on it. And then we would just go to the next page and so on. So that's what this is doing. And it's doing it way faster than I could even do it manually, right? So this took, I don't know, 17 seconds, literally 17 seconds for all of those pages to run. A little bit over that, and that's because of how Async.io works. It's doing everything concurrently. It's switching between each task, which is really, really cool. So that's incredibly fast. So now that we've done that, let's actually reload the links data frame. And what we see now is I have 252 links, almost like that. Like, that is really cool. And of course, we talk about exactly how to do all these things, but what we see here is the actual path, or the path to the specific product itself, a slug, and then an ID, and then whether or not it's scraped. So now let's actually go ahead and scrape an individual product detail. So this time I'm going to scrape 10 products all at once, and I'm going to definitely save that CSV file too. So this actually will take a little bit of bandwidth, and if you're on a Mac, I think Windows might even see this as well, is you'll see like a Chrome icon flash 10 times and then go away. And that's because I'm actually not actually running it with seeing what's actually happening, right? So we could do it where it actually opens up a browser in front of us and we can see all of the things that are loading and all that. That's not just something I need to do. So in this case, it actually took about 23 seconds to scrape 10 products. But now if we run through this data frame again, we still see the same number of links for our original one. So the original scrape links is still the same. It's still 252 rows. But our products data frame, well, we have a number of products now, right? So we have 9, well, actually 10, because it starts at 0. And this is giving us all this detail that's scraped from each individual product itself. That's a price, the size, the title, and so on. And then we could also take a look at how many rows are in there. No surprise, there's 10. Now, the reason there's no surprise there's 10 is because of this limit right here. So if I ran that again, it's going to take 25 seconds, 20 seconds or so, and that's going to update all of this data. So while that runs, actually, let's go ahead and take a look at that stored data. So inside of Dev, we see these CSV files. If I open that up, sure enough, there is my CSV file. I also have a now db.sqlite 3. This is definitely not on the repository. It's not a good idea to always save big databases, but the CSV files were, at least the ones that I did, which are several thousand, right? So that's pretty cool. Now, of course, these CSV files I could open up in any sort of program. It doesn't have to be in Python. It could be in Excel or something like that. And you could really monitor all sorts of things that are related to this, which I think is amazing. Okay, so let's actually now take a look at the products data frame again. Really, I just need to run this cell right here. This will load all of that data from the SQL tables that Pandas creates for us and recreates and overwrites and do all the cool things. And as we see here, we now have 20 rows. So I can run that as many times as I want. In fact, I could put this on some sort of scheduler where it's always being run, like at some certain interval, and then you could also have the links being run at some sort of interval. I actually think that we would hit the total number of product links sooner than we would hit the total number of products themselves, right? So that's also a pretty key component here. All right, so you should have been able to do this. Assuming that you have the dependencies running, you should have been able to run this with no real issues. Of course, if you have issues and they're beyond the scope of dependencies not being installed, let me know or submit an issue in here, because code-related issues are welcome, because we definitely want to make this thing a little bit better. And the big reason as to why we're using Arsenic, which is the way we can actually use the scraping of this data, if you look at this page, it actually loads. It takes a while for me to load it directly, right? It's not happening that quickly. So all that's driven through JavaScript, and we take care of all of that in this project, right? So the entire project makes sure that we have some sort of delay, which actually is a big part of the reason why we have this long time frame here. It actually takes a while for that service to even load. Other services that are a little faster, we might not need to do that, which is also pretty cool. So that's it. That's the demo for this one. If you do have any questions on the demo, if you ran into any issues, please let me know below. Otherwise, I do encourage you to take the entire series because I think it is really interesting and a lot of cool things that you're going to learn about with asynchronous coding with Python, Async.io, and a really cool tool called Arsenic.